Welcome to another edition of GSC's Digital Network Update Show presented by Florida's Space Coast. Remember, you can head to visitspacecoast.com to learn more about a vacation to remember. Welcome to another GSC Digital Network Update. I'm Jim Cavell, and we have a lot to cover this week as Gulf South Conference gridiron action was once again extremely exciting and contains tons of playoff implications as we get closer to the NCAA Division II playoff season. On top of all that, GSC men's and women's soccer and GSC women's volleyball are yet again closer to their championship runs, as the GSC championships will take place in Florida for GSC men's and women's soccer, and volleyball will be hosted by the top seed. Starting with football, all three of the GSC's undefeated squads remain perfect in Week 5, including 3 conference clashes and 1 non-conference battle, starting Thursday night, featuring 2 league contests led by Game 4 of the GSC TV Live Game of the Week broadcast, which broadcast for the first time from Melbourne, Florida, as Florida Tech opened its league schedule by hosting number 11 Delta State in a game that featured some of the top offensive talent in the GSC. Both offenses struggled out of the gate, combining for just 14 points in the first 23 minutes, only to pick up the pace with 29 total points in the final 7 minutes. The Statesmen held a 3-point lead at halftime and put the game away in the second half thanks to 35 unanswered points. Quarterback Tyler Sullivan combined for 6 total touchdowns, throwing for 5 and running for 1, while passing for 456 yards. Shorter defended its home turf for just the second time this season, earning a win in its GSC opener, 27-14 over Mississippi College. MC entered the final 15 minutes with a 1-point advantage, but the Hawks closed out the fourth frame with back-to-back touchdowns en route to a victory. For the third week in a row, the GSC featured a top 25 matchup versus league rivals, when number 24 West Georgia hosted a 26-17 triumph over number 22 West Alabama. Neither team led by more than 7 points until UWG opened a 13-point edge midway through the third quarter. UWA then cut its deficit to 6 points in the fourth quarter, but Hunter Heck sealed the win with a 36-yard field goal at the 4:30 mark. Number 5 nationally ranked North Alabama closed out the weekend by capping its homecoming with a 30-10 victory over Great Northwest Athletic Conference member Western Oregon. The win increased the GSC's record versus non-conference Division II opponents to 14-1, and it was UNA's 27th non-conference regular season win in 30 games. UNA's defense registered 9 sacks, and backup quarterback Jacob Tucker stepped in for starter Luke Wingo by combining for 190 yards and 2 touchdowns. Meanwhile, action is getting more and more thick when it comes to GSC men's and women's soccer, as GSC men's and women's soccer was in action last week, as number 21 nationally ranked Alabama Huntsville is now 3-1 in conference play, tied with Christian Brothers, who's also atop the league with UAH at 3-1. 8-2 overall is a record for UAH, while CBU is 7-2 overall. And West Florida struggling a bit overall, 3-4-2. It's unlike the Argonauts to struggle, but they're just a game out in second place at 2-1-1. West Alabama is at 2-2, and Shorter is at 2-0. Meanwhile, when you look at the women's soccer standings, once again, things getting very interesting as we get closer to the women's championships, which will take place with the men in Florida this year. West Alabama 5-0 conference play, 9-1 overall. Valdosta State 4-1-1 and 4-4-1 overall. VSU is in second place. Christian Brothers and North Alabama both at 4-2, and West Florida and Lee both at 4-1. And then moving over to GSC women's volleyball, led by Shorter, 9-0. West Florida is right behind them with North Alabama. Both teams at 8-2. West Florida number 21 in the nation, 14-2 overall. Shorter, who's in first place at that 9-0 mark, also is at 11-2 overall. Behind North Alabama and West Florida at that 8-2 GSC record is 7-3 Valdosta State and 6-4 UAH. And then Christian Brothers is at 5-5. The number 1 seed will host the GSC Volleyball Championships later this fall. And we will have all the action from those championships and the championships down in Pensacola, Florida for GSC men's and women's soccer right here on the GSC Digital Network. We'll also continue to cover the gridiron action for GSC football as we get closer to crowning another GSC football champ and sending several teams, hopefully, to the 2014 NCAA Division II playoffs. Until then, I'm Jim Cavall, and this is the GSC Digital Network. A reminder that this week's edition of GSC's Digital Network Update Show is provided by Florida's Space Coast. You can find them on the web at visitspacecoast.com to learn more about a vacation to remember. We'd like to thank our friends at Florida's Space Coast for presenting each week's update on the GSC Digital Network. And until next time, I'm Jim Cavall, and this has been your GSC Digital Network Update.